So some of the gold. All right, fellas. Firstly, on the eve of everybody's first Father's Day, congratulations.
Thank you.
You all did it.
We made it.
Yeah, exactly. So far, so good. So maybe I'll do a quick introduction because not everyone here knows each other. So I'll start, I guess, in chronological order, which will be you, Jackie boy. So Guards and I met each other in the 5th grade, which was 1999, and have pretty much been mates since. Guards is one of the hardest housemates I've ever had to live with, but
right back at you.
And so, yeah, it's been a heck of a journey to this point, and mate, super excited, obviously, to have you along for the next part as well. Right? And what are you drinking, Jack? What's on the menu for tonight, mate?
I've got salmon, mate, and it was going to be a carb-free night, but now I'm thinking I might do a little simple tomato risotto to accompany.
And what are you drinking?
It's a James Squire, 150 lashes.
Beautiful.
It's just about finished, so I've got one ready in the gun, ready to go.
Good man. Wouldn't expect anything less. Alexi, the Greek freak. So Alexi I met at Metal Therapy probably 3 years ago now.
Yeah. Actually, time has fly, really. 3 years ago.
Our first trip back from Canada and dropping into Gab's gym out there in the West, and met Alexi, and he likes to lift heavy weight, so we got on pretty well. And here we are 3 years later, and Alexi and his wife Alex are MTMM as well, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
What are you drinking tonight, mate?
I'm not drinking. I'm actually just watching the rugby. So just like full on KO, just watching rugby night all night. Not drinking, just water, tea. Keep it healthy.
There's always one.
Typical me. I'm a boring person. Water and rugby. I give up the Guinness once I stop playing rugby.
And then we have Akid, who's been on the podcast so many times. Most people think it's his podcast, and I'm just a regular guest. So here we are again. And we've been mates for what now? Akid's going on a year.
Yeah, that's about just over. You're probably a bit over now. When did you guys land back in Melbourne?
March, and then I think the first comp in Hawthorn was like May. So
yeah.
Cool. So like I said, pretty cool. Like obviously for all of us to be in a position where each of us are just becoming a father within 4 weeks, I think, of each other. So a couple of episodes we kind of did of the podcast leading up, obviously we were pretty heavily documenting like the birth, but one thing I definitely felt was that there's always a lack of resources out there specifically aimed at like expecting dads and new dads. And I thought a cool way just to, maybe put a resource out there and just have a chat with a couple of guys who are currently going through it firsthand for the first time. And just, get your thoughts on that. If we'll probably throw to Alexi just in the breaks of play and the ads and that sort of stuff to get his opinion, because I don't want to distract him from the rugby too much.
That's all right.
Yeah, mate, boys, I'm going to quickly pour myself a glass of wine. Akers, what are you drinking?
Whiskey, mate.
Jesus. Fireball?
Jeez.
Just whiskey and Coke. Sugar-free, of course, my friend.
Nice. Easy. All right, boys. Cheers. Congratulations. First Father's Day Eve.
Happy Father's Day, boys.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah, that's it.
What's planned? What do we all got planned? Jack?
About as much as we can have planned in today's current time, BJ. We're going to do a little picnic out in the backyard. It's meant to be a nice day. So the lawns have been mowed and watered, and the garden's looking nice. So hopefully we're going to, that's about it. So we'll do a walk in the morning with the dog and Bub, and before you know it, it'll be this time. It'll be this time at night, and I'll be thinking about bed.
So the old dad already on the lawn care.
On the lawn care, mate. It's spring coming up, so you're going to get that. Got to get it in order.
Been a hobby
grass bed.
5 weeks now.
Get the lawn top dressed. What's that?
been a hobby of yours for 5 to 6 weeks now?
No, it's been a hobby of mine since I had my own lawn. Take a lot of pride in my back lawn. The front lawn's a heap of shit and it's coming out this spring. So I'm looking forward to having 2 lawns to look after.
Easy, mate. Ali, what do you
Simple
got, mate?
things.
What's the plans for tomorrow?
Well, I wake up. Usually, me and Alex, we sleep in different beds, but during the weekend we sleep together. Only because I need my sleep when I go to work. Only because I deal with expensive and dangerous goods. So I usually sleep with her and Bab Saturday and Sunday. Sorry, Friday and Saturday night. And so I'm expecting a nice night. Wake up every 3 hours. Bab crying. But look, it's okay. I don't care. The thing is, we're just going for a walk. If the weather is nice, and then we hope he doesn't shit himself halfway through. And yeah, hopefully the weather will be nice tomorrow. So that's the plan so far. That's the plan.
Ackers? Same.
Yeah, pretty much. Nothing really planned. I'll try to get the housework done that I didn't get done today. And then I think Tracy has a few things planned for me. She generally is better at giving gifts than I am, so there's probably a whole parade of things planned.
So about 12 o'clock, once those whiskeys wear off, mate, and you stumble out of bed.
I'll definitely be having about one of these. That's probably about where I'll draw the line.
Good.
Do not deal well with hangovers.
Tell me, boys, first impressions of being a father. How are we finding it? How are we feeling? Still walking around on cloud 9?
I've sort of settled right back into the routine now. It's still pretty cool, and in the heat of workplace battle during the day, sometimes you forget that there's a little person to go home to, and that's what also I guess makes it really cool is it adds to your day. You don't just come home from work now. You come home from work to to a little family, a growing family, and yeah, it's cool. I'm enjoying it. I'm loving every minute of it. Not without its challenges, of course, but yeah, it's awesome. I love it.
It's definitely something that, like, I guess a different experience for Chris and myself as opposed to you guys who are having to go to work, right, and kind of be gone and be away for like 8 to 10 hours a day. No doubt, like that kind of presents some different challenges and stuff like that. So, and for Cheskers, right, and for Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, when I changed jobs after he was born, I personally said to my ops manager, look, I'm not doing overtime. I'm doing my 8 hours and then I clock off. I'm like, I want to spend as much time with him as possible. And, taking the way to work, the way back, I'm glad from one side I'm doing a 6:30 to 2:30 shift. So, because, in the morning he sleeps anyway. During the night he sleeps way more than what he does during the day instead. And I can come back and I can notice. I tell Alex sometimes I notice how fast he's growing, like from day to day. I don't know if you guys notice it, but I can tell the difference day by day.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
How you doing, Ackers? How you finding it?
Yeah, it's funny, like similar to yourself, obviously I don't have to go to a physical workplace. And I still notice a difference every day. Like every day she just looks a little bit different. She's a little bit taller. She's a little bit chubbier. It's cool. It's obviously difficult trying to work and trying not to be like, oh, I just should stop working and go and hang out but it's been amazing. I've loved every minute of it.
I found it almost like super good for productivity because there it is.
Smashing it out.
Yeah,
Hey.
You just want to get stuff done so you can kind of get
Watching the rugby with Dad.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing I've been working on a bit is trying to, I'm not doing that great yet, but actually what's my task list? When my task list is done, I'm done for the day. Whereas normally, you know what it's like. You've got so many different things to do. It just continues forever.
Yeah. You never get to the end of the to-do list, right?
No.
What's I'm interested to hear, boys, in terms of and I guess we can start right kind of at the beginning, but in terms of what you're expecting, like the first few weeks of fatherhood to be and what it's actually been? Was there a big difference? Was it exactly what you were expecting? Was it nothing like you're expecting? I know for me, I found most people like trying to give like, oh, it's going to be like this, or you have to try to do this or that. And guards, you know, we're mates with someone like Summers, who's like been in the business for all of 2 months more than we have, and has plenty of advice to give. But I think it's
so much wisdom.
Yeah, so much wisdom. But I think actually it was Alexi that said to me, like, my only piece of advice is don't take anyone's advice. So
Yeah.
Luckily, and I'm still thinking of that. Literally, I'm not kidding, because everyone is different. Every baby is different. Every mom, dad is different. And from one side, I didn't expect anything more or less. I just went with what was happening on the day. Because then, if you set, I think, expectations, then if they're not right, oh, why did I go through that rabbit hole, you know, and it didn't come out that way, you know what I mean? I was expecting, say, the worst, and it didn't from one side. But again, day by day, things changing, because one night he might sleep, one night he might not. One night Alex might wake me up because she needs help. One night I will sleep 8 hours through, no problem. So
is that something
I think that's...
How about you, Jack? In terms of like, did you have expectations? What were you expecting?
We were pretty open to all and sundry, and you know, being at the age group we are now, there's a lot of people in our position who have been able to share wisdom, advice, and look, I take it all in, and you know, there's been some pretty dud tips and some dud advice, and there's been you know, in contrast, some really great tips that have really helped us with things like bath time and feeding. Like, you know, I was expecting, you know, the worst as you do, you know, no sleep, nothing. But we've been, I think, exceptionally lucky with LB. He's pretty consistent at night, but you know, I'm aware that could all change at the drop of a hat, and you've got to be sort of prepared for anything. But yeah, no, it's exceeded my expectations. It's neither here nor there on what I expected. But yeah, no, it's going really well, and I am very lucky. I'm getting my 6 to 8 hours a night every night.
Yeah, we need to get Rafi on microphone, Alexi.
Yeah, well, he wants a boob, so it's like, that's why he was grumpy.
Yeah.
It's typical boy, like he screams every hour or two. It's like, boob, done.
It's
happy.
interesting too, I guess, that out of 4 of us, we've gone 2 and 2, 2 boys and 2 girls.
Yeah.
I know, Chris, that you guys decided that you didn't want to know gender until and kind of let it be a surprise. And I know that when we found out we were having a girl and found out that Gaz was having a boy and found out that Alexi was having a boy, that I was willing everything for you to have a girl along with me.
You were, yeah. I blame you. I blame you for sure. Two good mates of mine had boys. Like, one of my best mates had a boy. Another good mate of mine had a boy, and I grew up with those 2 guys, and those guys were scumbags. So I've told them already, stay away from my daughter. Yeah.
And how you finding Ackers in terms of like what you're expecting to encounter, or what it's been like relative to how you thought it might play out?
Yeah, same. Like, I went in with no expectations. Like, the only thing that probably surprised me was the labor. Like, you hear people be like, I had an 18-hour labor, I had a 20-hour labor, but you just don't realize how long 18 hours is until you're standing next to somebody for 18 hours who's obviously in excruciating amounts of pain. That was probably the only thing that surprised me. Everything else, the sleep, the nappies, nothing else has really surprised me as such. Like, we had probably like 1 or 2 nights where I was like, oh my God, this is killing me. And then ever since then, she's just been a superstar. Just each week gets a little bit better, goes from 3 hours to 3.5. Now I think maybe 2 nights in a row, she said she slept 6 hours straight. So, and that's like what Gardner said earlier, like, it can definitely change. The only good advice we've been given has been, don't get comfortable, because as soon as you get comfortable, it will change. And so I just, no expectations, just enjoy it. If she has a bad day, she has a bad day. Try and figure out what went wrong, but don't put too much thought into it.
Yeah.
I got Tracy does the opposite. Tracy puts all the thought into it.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
It's not don't put thought into it. It's don't be the one putting the thought into it, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Because there's always gonna be one, right? There's gonna be one person in the partnership that's gonna take a bit more on, and yeah, I'm the calmer. That's all right, babe. Everything's gonna be fine.
I feel like that's Kat too, to a T. So
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think you kind of need that, right? Like, and even as you mentioned, like during a like a labor experience where like things are super tense and emotions are like running super high. Like, I don't think it would be a good thing to have two like super over the top. You know, I don't want to
It
use
just wouldn't work.
strong, but yeah.
Sure.
I think that was the biggest advantage for me going into that situation was zero expectations, zero understanding. And even when things like got a little bit hairy, it was like, I still don't fully grasp really like the extent to things going south right now.
The nurses seem quite comfortable, so everything must be fine.
Yeah. Oh, all 12 of them in the birthing suite.
Yeah, that's what we had.
Know what they're doing. So fantastic.
Yeah.
Fuck labour, eh?
I'll say this, like, I think going into it, I was prepared practically for like, you know, having another person in the house and like what that would look like and that sort of stuff. But I think, and I don't know, maybe act as if it's heightened because we've had daughters, if it would be the same if we'd had sons, but like the emotional change and the perspective change that like occurred pretty much from like the first moment, like the fucking head down. And I think going into, I'm not super great with like other people's like newborns, always feel like super awkward, but it was just like, I remember that moment, like the first time I held her being like, fits perfectly in your arms. And it's just like, all you want to do is like go out and like get the world for this baby girl and bring it.
One thing I did notice is like, on the emotion thing is, like you said, someone else had handed me a baby and I would have been all over the place. Like, no, I actually would refuse normally half the time to actually hold someone's baby. But as soon as I was offered skin to skin time, I obviously took that. And a couple of nights ago, has everyone seen Rising Phoenix on Netflix? It's about the Paralympics. I highly recommend you go watch it. There's phenomenal athletes. Like, if you like sport in general, and from a parental perspective, maybe because I had a girl, there's a story in there, and then straight away it just cuts you deep. And it sets the tone for kind of the rest of the movie. It's an amazing, amazing movie. And it's probably something that 6 months ago I could have watched, and it would have been I would have loved it as a sport movie, and I would have been like, wow, these people are powerful. But the couple of parents growing up with children who would have had high needs growing up. And yeah, it was definitely something emotionally that I wouldn't have felt pre having a daughter or a child, for sure.
It's something that I've heard as well about watching films like Taken, that once you have kids, like you
doesn't it make you wish you grew up playing martial arts or fighting people or something
instead of
special needs?
Footy.
Footy just does not prepare you for anything.
It's incredibly interesting too, like how instantaneous that shift becomes. And I think like you almost feel like for a lot of it, you're kind of on the sidelines through pregnancy. Right? Like you're kind of watching all the experience like occur without really being a huge part of it. And then it's like all of a sudden it's like, bang, you're a dad and there's no going back.
It's your responsibility now.
Yeah. I'm interested to hear, and I guess we'll start with Jack and kind of work our way around again. Of all the things that you kind of had in the nursery, like ready to go, has there been like any item or product that people gave a huge rap in terms of like must-haves that's just been like absolutely useless?
I'm still pretty skeptical on the old nappy bin. There's $150 I'll never fucking get back again. But look, I'm sure once the little fella moves to ribeye steaks and sweet potato, I'll be happy to have that sound and smell proof bin that cost me $150 bob. But everything else was work a treat. Probably the thing that I'm thankful for the most is the humble Fitball, because he loves a bounce, and when he's unsettled, usually 5 to 10 minutes on the fit ball will settle him, if not put him directly to sleep. So highly recommend for anyone listening, any expecting dads, get yourself a fit ball. It's good pre-labor for, opening up all those relevant areas as well as putting them to sleep post inception.
Go to the garage, pull out the Swiss ball that's been at the back there for years.
There she is.
Scarlett.
So Scarlett.
She's beautiful, mate.
There she is.
Thank you very much.
How old's Scarlett now? 6 weeks?
8 weeks yesterday.
8 weeks.
Yeah, mate.
Dude, that's gone super quick.
Yeah.
You're telling me. It's nuts. She's a little bit unsettled. She should be napping, but I'm in her nursery talking on the phone, so she can sit on Daddy. It's normally a favourite place to fall asleep.
What about you, Ackers? While you got her there, anything that you thought was like a must-have that's hasn't come?
No, I put
the opposite. Anything?
I put zero thought into any of that type of stuff. Like Tracy had lists on things that were needed. Like we're very lucky. We actually got given that nappy bin, so I haven't even given it a second thought. It was $150. I probably wouldn't have bought it. But like so far, everything has been pretty handy. Probably one of the best buys has been the swaddle. When they're in like a starfish kind of suit. That has probably been one of the best things because she loves sleeping with her arms up, and it protects her from scratching the crap out of her face. But nothing really has been kind of useless. Like we got given so much clothes. We were very lucky because my sister has 2 daughters and Tracy's sister has 2 boys. So we just had so much kind of unisex clothes because we didn't know what we were getting. But yeah, nothing's been kind of useless yet, but there is still a lot of stuff in here that we are yet to kind of get to. Probably actually the what's the thing that cleans that stuff, honey? What's the stuff that cleans on the microwave? The sterilizer. That's probably the most useless thing. Yeah, we just got told that you don't even need to sterilize things the other day because she's breastfeeding. She doesn't need to. We don't need to sterilize anything. I was like, what did we buy this thing for? But we didn't buy it. We got given it to us. So
I think that was one thing that that I didn't realize either. Like when you do have a newborn, like it's like people come out of the woodwork with like newborn stuff. Like I think we maybe bought like 1 or 2 pieces of clothing, and the rest has just been like aunties and uncles and cousins and someone whose best mate had a newborn 2 years ago, and then I had kids, and like here's a stack of like baby clothes. Because it's like when I know with Matea, she was pretty small, so for the first 2 weeks, like everything was huge on her, and we had her in like a couple of like 4-0 sort of outfits, and then within 2 weeks it's like she's already outgrown them. So you got these like items of clothing that have been worn like 4 times, and it's like too small,
I didn't get a chance to get a 4-0 on LB.
Nah.
Really?
He went
straight to 0-0.
Straight to 0-0. How big was he when he was born?
He was 4.14 and 54 centimeters.
Wow. Jeez. Big.
That's why he come out the front window.
Was he full term?
He was 10 days over. Yeah.
10 days over.
10 days over. Okay.
So he's been hanging out there for just about an extra 2 weeks. But I imagine if he did come when he was supposed to, he would have been regulation size, and it probably wouldn't have wound up in a Caesar.
Yeah.
Jeez.
It's a big boy.
He is a big boy. He's put on 500 grams last week, so exclusively breast.
How many weeks is now?
He's 6 weeks tomorrow, so we'll get all his updates. But at 4 weeks, he was over 5 kilos. So he's tracked after dropping about 500 grams from birth weight, which is which I didn't know happened. So he put that on.
I didn't know.
Been watching his dad grow in ISO as well.
No need for a DNA test there, Gads.
That's funny. When Scarlett did come out, she straight on the chest, straight skin to skin, and we obviously didn't know the sex because we hadn't found out. And I thought, like in the movies, like it's a boy, and then they give you the girl or they give you the boy, put it on the chest, whatever. She was on her chest for probably about 3 or 4 minutes. We had no idea the sex. And she had the oldest man-looking face you've ever seen in your life. She looked like a full grandpa. Everything was so wrinkly. So I was like, yeah, it's a boy. Hell yeah. But it wasn't, was it? Yeah.
Did you have boys' names lined up, Hackers?
I only had in my mind, I had a boy's name. I didn't have a girl's name. So we actually like spent half an hour deciding, and it wasn't even a name that we had originally, like we had like 2 female names going in. And we ended up choosing a third that wasn't really high on the list. It was supposed to be a middle name.
There you go. We've done the same. People were like, "Oh, you should have a backup name in case like you see the baby and like you feel like that name doesn't fit." We had one name, like that we were making the name fit. We were going to push the square peg in the circle hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. And what about you, Alexi? What's been the number one baby purchase so far?
Baby purchase? Well, again, the Swiss ball, believe it or not. When you said the Swiss ball before and even now, that's sometimes the only way he falls asleep. Even now, like he was the best. It was the best thing when she was in labor. It was the best thing, like literally fully labor at the hospital, and it's the best thing so far to put him down to bed. The Swiss ball, like surprisingly, I don't know if it's like because Alex is being training like a month before going into labor, and then she stopped because she was like the pain was getting too much on her hips. But literally the Swiss ball was just like a lifesaver. And I was like, oh, cool, because she had hips problems. So I was like, oh, why don't you try the Swiss ball when you sit down instead of sitting on a couch or on a chair? And it was helping. And then, as Chris said, the sterilizer, the biggest useless thing, like still sitting in the cupboard collecting dust. And we're probably like going to recycle it to the next like friend who has a baby. So
yeah,
like,
for sure.
Here, have fun. Never used it.
Keep the box. Yeah.
Even the expressing machine, the one for the milk, it did help a couple of times expressing milk when she was like still not getting milk. So it was more like trying to like push the milk out of it. But then after that, useless. Same as she even bought like an IKEA chair where actually you rock. Useless again. I mean, like the all stuff that I think you realize trying them, not working, put them away and sell them on marketplace.
Yeah, I think that the nursery, like in general, like I know we were panicked to like get the nursery ready when we moved into the new house before like baby came along, and then now it's just literally like moving all the shit that we need that's in the nursery. Like we got a change table set up, dragged like the rocking chair into the bedroom as well. So I guess if you are listening and you are expecting, like cool your jets, because you probably got close to 6 months after delivery date before
you won't even use it. Yeah.
Actually what I noticed that my mom-in-law bought it for us, and then my dad brought the biggest version of it, and he literally can stay and stare at that thing for hours. It's this. Like,
oh yeah, we got one of those.
He literally just looks at that stuff like ongoing. And that's actually the plain version. Then my dad went full blown and he bought like the biggest cool, like I don't even know how much he spent, that these things lights up. And how the fuck turns on? So these things, and the ship start to actually go around, different music, white noise, volume control, remote control. I'm like, what the fuck?
Is it just Greek lullabies?
Yeah, just lullabies, just to settle him down. And we put him down here, and that's what it is. Just to draw, changing, that's it. That's what it is.
Beautiful.
I mean, this is useless. Well, of course, changing bag. That's for me when we go around, like just like holding bar. Use it once so far, and he prefers the pram. So again, I believe everyone is different.
The pram and the car seat's been a revelation. Like they hate going in it.
Yeah.
And as soon as they're in and you start moving, they're just like out cold.
Yeah. Well, Rafi falls asleep straight away as soon as we go out for a ride or something like that. I don't know yours, but mine is just like, you want to just go to sleep, put him in the seat, let's go for a 5-minute drive. It was like there.
How old's
Been
Raph?
lucky with that. I get
So Rafi is 7 weeks tomorrow.
All right, so 7, 8
So
weeks, and then guards. How old's Elby?
6 tomorrow.
There you go.
Yeah. So
And
we're like 1
Matty?
week apart, all of us.
She was 3 weeks yesterday, or 3 weeks on Wednesday. So
3.5.
Crazy.
yeah,
A week apart almost.
it feels like
Yeah, a week apart. Yeah, true.
when you look back now, and I'm sure it's the same for you guys too. It's almost hard to remember like what it was like before they came along. like what?
Yeah, what do I do with all that spare time?
All this extra time. Yeah, exactly. Probably sleep active.
Yeah.
I will also say, what were we doing before COVID? Also, that's the other
Yeah, I
question.
can't even remember that either. Yeah.
We all like, we had our babies full during COVID. So we're like, how was life before COVID without wearing a mask all day long? I'm like, what?
To be fair, it's probably not like the worst time to
It's not a bad thing.
have
Just
had,
from a family perspective.
especially your first, right? Like it's kind of been
Yeah.
the best way to not like, I guess, you know, none of us really know relative what it's like not having a baby during COVID, but I can imagine, especially like the first 2 weeks, when you're still trying to get into a routine. And, you know, if you do have people like dropping past, it just would get exhausting, right?
Yeah.
It's been a little bit of a blessing in that sense, COVID times, because, you know, you think about when our parents, had us and there was no such thing as FaceTime or SMS and, you know, the hospital would just be overrun with visitors, family, aunties, uncles.
Could you imagine that?
You couldn't,
No
even pre-mobile phones, they wouldn't know the baby's name. So, you know, they'd all rush to hospital assuming you'd had it. You know, and COVID sort of given us the opportunity to really soak it in. I guess I had 3 weeks off work. And, you know, I watched a lot of the NBA, the lead up to the NBA playoffs, but I actually had a chance to just sit there and get to know my son a bit. And we've had our parents over on, you know, with carers certificates, and they've been bringing us groceries and all of that, so that, you know, we can limit our exposure and our social interaction as much as we can. I think it's been in a way where, you know, as shitty as this situation is, we've been pretty blessed to have had additional time, you know, with our newborns that wouldn't ordinarily be granted to new fathers.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that.
At the same time, that it's not too long that it continues for, because it'd be awesome to be able to do this in person and have the Christmas parties and let the little ones do some tummy time on the lounge and the rest of it. But so, because I think Accas, you guys were at Frankston Hospital as well, right? So I think Accas and guards, you guys were using the same delivery fleet, maybe the same room, maybe the same doctors.
Our doctor was did you have a female doctor, guards?
Yeah, we had a female. We had all females. There was a male who came in late in the piece, who was an obstetrician, and he sort of gave the ultimate advice that sent us to the OR. But other than that, we had girls only, and they were awesome. You know, Francesca was pretty solid. She wanted to, you know, do it all naturally and without pain relief. And with the induction process, she sort of started the labour by herself, and I came back in at about 7 a.m. And then, you know, after roughly 24 hours of labour, he just wasn't going to make it out, all 4.5 kilos of him, and you know, so you know, gave me a newfound appreciation for my wife that, you know, I didn't think existed.
That's one thing that you've got to appreciate, is being a male in this whole situation.
Yeah,
definitely.
Could you imagine the labor? That labor would just be intense.
I think the appreciation you get, like, not even just for your wife too, but when you realize like how many people are on the earth and that everyone had to go through
the same thing.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Like your respect for like the whole process and women in general, you know, like it makes me even think about when you look at things like maternity leave and stuff like that, and you just think like shit, like it's a traumatic experience, right? Like it's not as simple as like just going in, like the emotional angst and the physical, like obviously, you know, journey as well. Like I think, you know, when we all think that we're married to the strongest woman going around, or engaged to the strongest woman going around, in your case, Agnes. But yeah, when your wife is like looking at you, and like, I know for Kat, she was like, I don't think I can do this. Like, I honestly think like I'm going to die. And there's like nothing you can do about it. Like pat her on the back and like get her some water. Like,
Got it.
she's
Yeah.
such a useless piece of shit during the delivery. So
there's definitely a role to be played there, and you know, for those expecting and planning on being in the birthing suite, it's just my only piece of advice is to play your role and do what you're told. And if that's, you know, not touching her during contractions, or if that's let your hair be pulled or feeding ice chips, that's your role. Everyone's got a role to play in that birthing suite. The ultimate job and responsibility is certainly with mum.
It's funny, like, hearing your story, because like, guys, you guys obviously had a long labor. Like, I think for us, we went in there with like a bag of meal prep, took the laptop to watch a movie, like get the Swiss ball ready. And we got admitted
on
at
holiday.
7, and 4 hours later, like we had Maddie. So yeah, I felt cheated. I felt cheated on.
I wanted to watch my movie.
Wanted to watch Essendon Gold Coast. There she is.
Hey.
Very gorgeous.
There you go. She's been super spewy.
It's a little tiny.
All right, guys, I'm going to restart the meeting super quickly, because here on the More Than Macros podcast, we use the free version of Zoom, and because there's more than one.
Maybe once you get some sponsorship, you can.
Do you want to use mine, mate?
Once Iron Tribe becomes the official sponsor of the More Than Macros podcast, we might upgrade the software there a little bit.
Do you want to use mine? I pay for the software.
No, it's all right. It'll record down to the laptop, so it'll be easier to edit.
Sure.
But if you got stuff to do, or if you got to feed or put to bed, feel free not to rejoin. But I'll just restart the meeting. Just click the link and come straight back in.
Fire up.
Tracy just had a ripper of an idea, Ben. Benny? Can anyone hear me? Oh.
Well,
Benjamin.
It's not supposed to bring her up. You're
muted, mate.
Yeah, I'm muted because my daughter's deciding to sing a lullaby to her old man.
Ah, nice. Tracy just had a good idea, in that you have the female version of this, and then the girls listen to our version of the story, and then pause it, and then be like, "That doesn't happen. This is what happened."
Yeah, I have to be really careful when people say, "Oh, you know, how are you going at night, and how's he sleeping?" And I have to stop myself from going, "Oh, yeah, great," because I'm not the one getting up at night. Because
I was just corrected on that. Don't worry.
I said to Kat the same thing. It would be super funny to have the girls sit down and have a chat and see the change in perspective. But yeah, I'm always getting like the nudge at like 4:30 in the morning, like she just needs a change. And I'm like, oh, and then I'm like, I've slept for 3 hours solid. I know Matea hasn't slept for 3 hours solid, which means like one of us has been up for the last 3 hours, and it hasn't been me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. That's what Tracy said then. It was 6 hours between feeds, and she's like, she hadn't slept for 6 hours. I was like, oh, okay, well, obviously I wasn't doing anything for 6 hours. I slept for 6 hours that night.
I had a great sleep.
I think I never realized either how much noise newborns make. Like,
but it's good.
Yeah, like I don't know if I thought they go from like nothing unless they're crying to like talk.
Yeah.
But they're just like non-stop, like snorting, snoring, squeaking, like, and then they'll be like halfway through making a noise and then like go quiet. And I'm like, oh fuck, is she breathing?
yeah, for sure. I still walk into the room, like, even like every now and then, because we've got a co-sleeper.
Jack?
What's that?
Is your arm getting sore?
Matey, he wears you down over time, and he's a real squirmer, but he's just had a feed, so all right. So he's just had a little bit of comfort tit, just just to shut him down. But we think he overeats a bit because he's always after a feed. He's just battling away, and then once he does a shit in his pants or a burp, he's like, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah. We've had that with Mateo as well. Like there's a little bit of oversupply. So she like gulps. She has to like gulp it down. And then because she's gulping so much air, like as soon as she's finished, she's like, until she burps, she's just like super uncomfortable. And then she'll like spew on herself and then she wants straight back on. They're like that, the most munted person at a party that just like never sobers up. Right. Like,
he's just like a little Andy Summers, mate. Just a liability. Chirpy as like from 3 a.m. last night. He was asleep, but he was just going, hey. No, like, mate, shut up.
Have a look at him.
His cat coming to say g'day.
Oh, look at that big boy. See
Mackie. There's Mackie.
The man. Look at
that delicate little girl.
It's also 4 weeks as well.
Yeah.
It's funny, like even now, Akkers, the fact that like you and I don't have a baby in our arms means someone else has the baby, like looking after them.
Yeah, Tracy's like organizing things in the kitchen and she's got a baby strapped to her while I sit on the computer and talk.
And Alexi's obviously the second half has kicked off in the rugby and he just decided not to.
He's not coming back.
No, good. Okay, so this is where the podcast, I guess, gets interesting because I'm almost half a glass through probably my first drink in like 8 weeks. So like it's might start to get a little bit emotional, but yeah, I think I read this Mike Myers quote yesterday or the day before, and it's like whoever said becoming a father was the best thing in the world, like severely understated it. And I like could not agree more. Like I reckon it's just been like, I don't know if the word like achievement is like the right word, but it's like I fucking love being a dad. Like I love having that title. And it's like something you almost want to stick on your resume. You know, like you've joined like this prolific club that like, and I remember Jack, you and I chatting that night you got back from the hospital, I think. And I remember you saying like, talking like about the delivery room experience and saying like, even as I'm saying this to you and you understand what I'm saying, you have no idea what I'm talking about. And until you actually go through that, you'll never understand. And I remember actually going through the delivery room experience once it was all over and I was like, I fucking get it. Guys was like bang on the money there, you know?
Yeah. And it's pretty special. And I mean, again, a different experience for me. I wasn't allowed to stay, but by the time he exited the front window at 8:30 p.m., I didn't get home till 3 a.m. So I had that time, and whilst Francesca was in recovery, I had the first bit of skin to skin, and he did a big old shit in the chest. But I was just looking at him, and I just remember wanting to FaceTime my parents and my in-laws because they were just beside themselves with, wanting to see and know everything. So yeah, the experience flew, and you obviously clued up because I don't often respond to messages after 8 o'clock. I like an early bedtime, and when I tagged you in something at 2 a.m, I got the text and you said, anything to report there, Big Bet? And so you're actually the first one of my mates to find out that I was a father. Well, it was going to happen eventually, and plenty of people knew that. But you were the first person that I actually spoke to over the phone, other than my immediate family, BJ. So
there you go.
Put that on your resume as well.
Another More Than Macros exclusive. We get all the exclusives here, mate. We had Akkers announce that they were pregnant on the podcast.
Yeah, that was a bit premature.
Nah, it's are you guys feeling like, how are you feeling about tomorrow? Like, do you feel like it's like a coming of age experience, like a passing of the baton experience? Like maybe I'm a little over emotional because for us it's obviously the first one that we're gonna have without Dad.
Bittersweet.
It's almost like very bittersweet. Like it's, I guess, like a passing of the torch. We haven't not had a Father's Day. It's just some big shoes to fill in a sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I don't know. I've sort of always been slightly ambivalent towards the days that we just seem to throw in the calendar. At least this is how I thought before I became a father. But I was lucky enough to catch up with my old man this morning, and it's his 33rd as a father, but first as a grandfather, and he used the term career defining moment for him. So I think he feels like his job's done as a father, maybe, but no, he's very excited, and it's given him a new lease on life, as well as my mother and the in-laws as well. To have, it's a special day for them as well. They're still fathers and mothers, but adding their first grandchild on both sides, which makes it a little bit more special. Not that it's not special if they're not the first grandchild, but yeah, I feel like fairly accomplished that like I'm a dad, and we've got our house and we've got our family, and yeah, it's cool. It's cool. He's probably not going to get me a present, but that's cool. The shops are closed.
Ackers?
Yeah, I don't know. It's the coming of age thing. It's bizarre because I've always looked forward to being a dad. Like, I've got a lot of mates that I'd have conversations with where throughout early 20s, late 20s, they weren't ready. They didn't want to have a kid, and then eventually they became ready or had a kid. They didn't have a choice. So, but I don't know. Like, I've never really. My old man doesn't really care too much about Father's Day, and so that's probably rubbed off on me in that. That's why, like, even tomorrow, like the things I have planned, like, I obviously want to spend it with my family, but I would rather do things for Tracy, because this last, whatever it is, 8 weeks, like you said earlier, in the labor room, like, they're just absolute weapons, and they don't stop. Even when Bubs comes out, they're always thinking, what else can we do? So yeah, I don't know. It'll be a different weird day. Like, we always spend it with family. So that'll be different again. Obviously not spending it with family. So we'll probably have like 2 or 3 different FaceTimes with my mum and dad, with Tracy's mum and dad. But yeah, like, no real kind of thoughts on Father's Day, because I think my old man rubbed off on me.
Yeah. Yeah. Any new dad gags? Has anyone been pulling them out, throwing them around, using their new privilege?
I've always been using dad jokes.
Don't need to be a dad to do shit gags.
Yeah.
I feel like probably the other things that changed is like your perspective on, I guess, like what like your parents kind of went through, and I feel like you get a bit more of an insight into like I think 2 things. I think I never really fully understood what like complete unconditional love meant until I was like looking at my child, right? And then on the other side of that too, like, it's like instantly I understand like helicopter parenting, like why you would want to go out of your way to like make sure that like nothing bad ever happens to your kids, or that they don't get hurt, or whatever it is. And I think, Ackers, we've had this conversation a few times as well, and I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges, is like you want your kids to grow up and be independent. I'm already hammered. I'm already slurring my words.
Oh, that mate.
You want them to
Good
be
to have you back.
Now I can't say it. Independent, resilient, like have the ability to kind of go through hardships and have the skills to be able to overcome them and grow from them. But at the same time, like, that means you have to kind of stand there and like allow them to go through, like heartbreak and, like have failings, be let down, like, not accomplish things that they set out to accomplish in order to get there. Like, that's going to be a hell of a lesson,
Yeah, shit. Yeah, I think it's something that I came to appreciate with age, just what my parents had done for me. But I feel like now it's something that I can only truly appreciate now. You can think you understand and interpret what it is to be a parent and what they do for you, and like, it's my mother's 60th tomorrow, and she'll listen to this. So happy 60th birthday, Bronny. Shame you had to share it with Dad, but like it just emphasises my point that you know, as parents, it's, you know, you sacrifice a lot and you do a lot for your children, and as challenging as it can be, it's certainly got its rewards.
Yeah, it's funny. It's you look back at things obviously in a different light, and you see your memories of certain situations of them juggling, and like whether it's juggling finances to get you into drum lessons, or whether it's, you know, picking you up. I played so much sport, like I think, and that's always what I wanted to do as a father, is be at every sporting event possible, be the runner, be it the football or whatever it is, be the ballet shoe shiner, whatever it is whatever sport that they choose. And it's like, even from like 13 years old, if I wanted to go to my girlfriend's house at the time, Dad would be there to kind of drive you to that. Like, you think back now and it was like, and as much as there was a little bit of kicking and fussing, there wasn't really much complaining, considering like now Tracy could be like, can you do me a favor and just go pick up the dog poo? I'm like, oh my God, what else do you want from me? Like, so it's like, it's, you obviously have a very different memory of, you just think that parents come pre-bought that way. They know the right answers, the wrong answers. They're there to stop you from having fun. They're, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
But they're babies themselves, right? Like, especially if you're their first or second kid, they're making the same mistakes you are. What we are going to make as well, I should say. So yeah, it's very interesting looking back at it, being like, you know, you're trying to ruin my life, and they're like trying to hold themselves together, let alone raise a child at the same time.
Or multiple kids too, right?
Oh, multiple kids, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I would have been 3 or 4 when my dad was my age, and yeah, I feel like I would have been a handful, but I have nothing but great memories of childhood and him following me around, and, you know, grabbing me by one arm while he had a stubby in the other, but, you know, each to their own.
Yeah,
I think that's I'm kind of the same with you, Chris. Like I've always wanted to be a dad, and I think I always knew I would be a dad, just wasn't quite sure like in what capacity or like what the timeline would be on that. You know, whether you'd have a wife and the rest of it, I guess, that comes with it. And obviously,
well, I said I wanted a kid before 30, and I'm 33 now.
Yeah. I always said 30. 30 was my goal. And I guess to the opposite of Craig, Jack, like my old man was in his 60s when we were teenagers, right? So like you think of, you know, I'm exhausted now with a 3-week-old at 32. Like I can only imagine trying to be mid 60s with like a 14, 15-year-old.
Yeah, but I feel like your dad was smarter than the average man, mate. He would have outsourced a lot of the babying to your big sisters, who were teenagers at that stage as well. So don't worry about old Vic, mate. He's a sly old fox up there.
I agree, but even still, like, you know, a lot of like my memories of my old man are like him being sick and being in the hospital and stuff like that, and that's always kind of been my motivation for like wanting to do it young, so that when your kids are, you know, like I would love to think that I can still be in the gym, like throwing weight around when she's 17, 18 and stuff like that, or like, you know, having multiple kids and like you said, act as like not just going to footy, but being able to like take them to kick the footy or like dunking on them, right?
Yeah.
And being able to
yeah, my dad beat me until he couldn't. He tried really hard to beat me until he couldn't.
But yeah, to be like not just like observing like them, you know, growing up, but to be able to like participate to the full extent, I think for us has been like a huge driver in wanting to become a dad. So
yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I think you don't really realize the sacrifices that they actually do make. Like on the other shoe, my mum wasn't at much sport. She was as much as she could be, but my mum and dad made a decision to work very different hours to each other, especially in the first kind of early periods of our life. So you also look back and you're like, you know, as a kid, you probably think you're like, oh, mum's busy with work or whatever. You don't realize that she's like, I don't want to be working. Like, I'd love for nothing to be at the footy or at the basketball or whatever it was. So yeah, you really look at the decisions that parents kind of make in a very different light than when you're a kid and you just assume the worst situation, right? So yeah, it'll be interesting. Like me and Tracy, probably most nights, you have a conversation. It's like, how do you, as to what you said earlier, Benny, with you want to make them resilient, you want to let them fall, you want to let them grow, and it's like, well, how do you, like, even me, I just got a bit of another drink before. I'm like, how do you teach them to kind of respect alcohol? Because we didn't respect alcohol as kids, and we would just go out and it was like, who could get the drunkest at 14 years old? Like, and it's like, I don't want my daughter to.
Literally, like every time we still catch up, right?
Yeah. So it's like, how do you instill? And it's interesting because, like, you see, like, obviously their friends, the kids that they hang around with, will obviously have a huge impact on that. But the principles that that guide them are going to come from mum and dad. And so I think to kids who I've coached, be it I won't name names, but there's a couple of them who are just absolute jets of kids who are making the best decisions that they can, and they have to make bad decisions. That's what it is to kind of grow up to learn. But they'll make the best of a bad decision as a kid. So it's like, how do you, as a dad, how do you instill that in them to be like, yeah, for sure, you need to make poor decisions. You need to stay up too late. You need to party. You need to do, but you also want them to do it safely and possible. Because you think back to the situations that you got out of as a kid, and you're like, how did I survive that?
Yeah, I'm glad my parents never found out about that, right? But
yeah, 100%.
I think
Mom and dad are always like, oh, we know what you're up to, and you're like, oh my god, I don't think you do. You wouldn't let me leave the house.
I think that's kind of further to your point before, where it's like, you only know your parents as people like since they became parents, right? But you have no idea of like
them partying.
Yeah, and I wonder how that changes now that it's like we have our whole like, I guess, like late teenage to like 20s, like all those years where we really grew up, essentially like completely documented somewhere on the internet.
100%.
So those,
my MySpace is still live.
Yeah, and I think for the most part, like, because I've thought about this question a lot, like what happens when they want to do things that you've done and you feel like you have to take this like unnecessary like hardline stance, and then it's going to be a whole question of rebellion. But I think it comes down to like having those kind of like tough conversations like early on, right? And trying to set a precedent like within your house where like there aren't subjects that are taboo, and obviously I think we all think we're going to raise these like super rational like 10-year-olds where it's like, or even younger, like even now when Matea's like screaming at me and she's been fed and changed, I'm like, use your words. Like, I don't understand what you want when you speak to me. Like, tell me what you want. But like trying to start those things where like, if there's something bothering you, like let's have a safe space, have a conversation. Because ultimately at the end of the day, like I might be disappointed. Like, I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed in like some of the choices that they choose to make. But you want them to know that if they get in trouble, like your primary concern is their safety. That's why you're upset. Yeah. That's why you get angry, is because you're worried, not because like you care necessarily about like the actual decision itself, right? So that's what people have said to me, like, oh, what are you gonna say when your kids want to go out drinking and stuff like that? And I think it's the same. I think you just have those conversations where it's like, are you going to party and drink like to try it or whatever, or is it because there's stuff going on that like you're struggling to cope with and you're using it as a coping mechanism? Because I think that's a conversation that you'd hate to find out at 5-10 years like after the event, right?
Yeah, I think one thing I've thought about a bit is like, how do you make it feel like they are part, or they are a necessary kind of cog in the wheel? As in, like, you think, like, you hear of all these issues with like more richer suburbs and their kids having more mental health issues than, say, your lower socioeconomic areas, to an extent, obviously. And it's like, well, like, how are they? Because like, I feel like if you think about your mum and dad and you're like, well, mum and dad need me, they need me to do A, B, or C, you're part of something and you're providing. Whereas if everything's been provided for and you don't need anything, then who are you in the world? Because obviously the whole role of a teenager is to figure out where they fit in this world. Because I don't know what I want to study. Is choosing an elective in year 9 going to set me up? If I choose woodwork over metalwork, am I going to be a woodworker for the rest of my life? Like, how do you set them up? So I feel like in my mind, obviously it's going to change, but making them feel like, well, no, I need to be a part of this family. Like mum and dad need me, as opposed to like mum and dad are always just trying to tell me what to do. Like, so that's one thing that I've thought about.
I think you get to a point where you have to be okay with the fact that your kids are their own person and not the person you necessarily want them to be, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I think again, like when you try to have like plenty of lines of communication where, and I think ultimately like it comes down, your kids just want your attention. You know what I mean? They just want like your time and your undivided attention, and everything else is peripheral to that. You know, like I would like one thing for me, like I love footy. Like I love watching the footy. Like I don't care who's playing. Luckily for me, because my team's shit, so I don't really get to celebrate a lot of wins. But I just genuinely love the game. And so even when we had like bringing Kat back here, I was like, oh God, like it is important to me that she enjoys it, because if she doesn't like watching the footy, like that's going to be a cause of conflict, right? Like within the dynamic of the relationship. And I think the same thing about Matea. Like I want her to like the footy because I feel like that is something that we can enjoy together. So I almost feel like there's an element of what can I do to make sure that whenever like the footy's on, like she's having a good time, so that she like associates like watching the footy with like a positive experience, or kicking the footy, or wanting to play like all that sort of stuff, right? I think it just comes down to attention, honestly. Like ask them, like, what do you want to do? What do you enjoy? Let's go do that together, you know? Because I think that the problem starts when they feel like they're not getting attention, or they're, you know, not a priority or anything else, and start to act out, right? Or
yeah, well, reading a book by Steve Biddulph called Raising Boys, and it's all about how you know, the times have changed, and what boys need at what age periods, etc. Thank you. And it goes on to and backs it up with a lot of supporting literature, and it says, you know, that boys, and again it's a little bit different to you guys having girls, that for the first 12 years on earth, all boys need is love and attention. And when they get to that more formative age of 14 and onwards, that's when they need a role model. So, you know, what Albie's going to do when he's 16, 17, 18 and beyond hasn't even crossed my mind yet, because my first challenge is to get him there. So luckily I've got all this time to work out how I'm going to be able, you know, 12 to 14 years to work out how I'm going to be able to set the best possible example for my son. You know, and there's plenty that I want to take from my own relationship with my father, and you know, there's plenty that I want to put my own stamp on it. And but yeah, certainly haven't thought about if he's going to be getting up to the same things that I did in my late teens, early 20s.
And of course he will. Of course he will.
Of
You know?
Probably going to be worse.
100%.
I think two things about that. I think firstly, you know, kids are going to learn from the example that you set rather than like the lessons you try to teach them. Right?
For sure.
And so I think like that is something, even with a 3-week-old, that I'm trying to be a little bit more cognizant of, and maybe that is helping with like productivity, right? Where it's like, okay, I've said I'm going to do something, like regardless of how big or small it is, like I want to follow through on that, because even for myself, like I want that to be a habit. I don't want to be, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. I want to be like, I've said I'm going to do something, and now I'm going to see it through, no matter like how much challenge or how unpleasant it is, right? But I think guards, you know, maybe I can, like another 2 points here. Like I think a lot of the stuff that I know that I went through as a teenager, or even like as a young adult, like it was always okay because of like the group of friends that we had, you know, and we had plenty of like good girlfriends as well as good guy friends. And like, yeah, we did some stupid shit that like you'd rather not recount, or that you're not super proud of, but like we made it through. And so I think for me, the best part of having, you know, a couple of us all having kids at the same age is that like, I trust you guys as friends. I trust the example that you set as parents. So it's like, you know, should our kids be going out together and go to parties and whatever else, there's an element of like, I feel more comfortable knowing that Matea is out with Scarlett and Albie than like if she was out with just kids from her school, Do you know
For
what I
sure.
mean? But guards, you fucking keep it.
Don't worry, mate. Don't worry. Francesca's going to have the same conversation with you about breaking hearts, mate. Don't you worry about that. Or it's funny. It's funny how the father's concerns for their daughter or their son are different to the mother's concerns about their daughter or their son. So you are both probably worried about boys, whereas I'm worried about him, getting a license and wrapping a car around a tree, whereas his mother's worried about,
very true.
Whereas his mother's worried about, his first love that may or may not break their heart and may not create friction between two old friends. You don't know. You don't know.
Well, I'd hate.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it?
I'd hate for yours and Aka's relationship to dissolve like that guards in 18 years.
Before it started.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. You put it like that. Like I've never actually thought of it in that particular way. Like as a boy, if I had a boy, my fear would not be around girls. My fear would be around him on a motorbike or out with mates jumping through fire hoops just because someone had a flame, right? Like just doing stupid boy stuff. I had a friend of mine, he broke his back in Thailand jumping through a circle that was on fire. And so my memory is always boys when they hurt themselves. It's always action adventure, right? Like, oh, I'm invincible. I can do that. So yeah, I never actually thought of it that way.
Yeah, now I'm like twice as terrified as I was starting this conversation. Thanks, guys. It's like it's a big responsibility, right? Like I've been reading like a lot of like Jordan Peterson, like 12 Rules to Life. I love all that like philosophy and that sort of stuff. And even in terms of coaching, like being able to help someone work through, things like their identity and their character as a term and as a way of helping them like achieve their other peripheral goals is super important. And I think ultimately, to go full circle there is a bit of that, like hoping that a lot of those like fundamental things that you can instill early on will kind of like carry them through, right? Like that period of time.
Yeah, I think what my vision of it is like what you do early on matters obviously the most, because up until they have that rebellious period, they're going to just mirror everything that you do. They're going to want to be your little shadows. Then they'll go through a rebellious period where it's like trying to figure out who they're going to be. And then later in life, it almost comes that full circle where they're like, well, all the lessons that they were taught early on are the lessons that they are most proud of to kind of follow in the footsteps. It's interesting thinking about it now, isn't it?
We said, I remember when we were pregnant and like getting pretty close, I was like, Kat was like super excited for like the newborn phase. And for me, I was like, the newborn phase is like the potato phase, right? Like they're not real interactive. They barely have their eyes open. Like they just kind of like eat, sleep, shit. Like that's it. And it's like, I'm looking forward to, like the toddler phase where they're like up and walking around and they're chatting to you and they got a little bit of attitude and a little bit of sass. And it's like, you then realize that if they're getting to the point where they're already formulating argument and opinion and attitude, they've already learned everything they're going to learn from you to that point, right? So it's not that it starts at that stage. It's like, it's on, if you're waiting the first 2 years, it's too late. Like you've missed it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And if I was you, I wouldn't be worried about a little bit of sass, mate.
Mate, I'm more worried about like keeping the peace between the two of them. That's going to be my major concern for the next 20 years, I reckon.
I think Francesca will emulate that fear.
Are you guys like I think, and I'm sure Kat won't mind me like sharing this, but I think she had even her own reservations and doubts about like, what happens if we have this baby and I don't feel like instantly maternal, or like, do you guys, like, I look at her now and I'm like, it's almost like she was born to be a mother. Like she's just like instantly, it's not that she's changed in any way as a person. It's like there's something that was just inside her that is just like being brought to the surface, and she's just a natural.
Yeah, true story. But that's not uncommon for people to think, well, how am I going to form an emotional connection with someone who just wants to sleep, eat and shit all day? But I think you know,
They
from
married
my own perspective. What's that?
They married us.
Yeah, exactly. True story. You know, and from my perspective as well, she just took to it like a duck to water, like it, you know, it was her life's ambition and her life's work coming to fruition. She's a complete natural. You know, for me, I've got to work a little bit harder than that. I've got to become a little bit more patient. I've struggled with the crying because, you know, when you're a fixer and you're an organizer, you just want to be organized and fixed, and you can't be that person anymore. You've got to adapt, and you've got to make concessions for, you know, this little life. Whereas for Francesca, so will just come to her naturally. It's pretty special to watch.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool because obviously you have those conversations early on in the relationship as to how, like, do you want kids? What happens if you don't really want kids? Do you, like, all that type of stuff? And yeah, I was more concerned about myself. Like I said, I always wanted to be a dad, but it's like, what if when you meet the baby, it's not this instant connection? And obviously it's the fear of the unknown more than anything, really. And like you said, like myself and Tracy, like as soon as we saw her, the whole world just changed, and like the whole world was just a better place to be in. And each day, like I never thought that I would be impressed that my kid could follow something across, you know, 10 centimeters. I'm like, man, my kid's the smartest kid in the world. Have you seen this chick? Like, she's lifted her head like 1 inch. I'm like, oh, you are so powerful. You are so strong.
You're gonna have the best clean.
Yeah. So it's been, it's like you said earlier, like it's just it surprises you probably every day, something new, and you're like, fuck, how are you so clever?
Do you think it's circumstantial? Like, do you think it has a lot to do with being in, you know, super loving relationships with someone that, you know, you do have so much respect for and really, you know, not hold on a pedestal, but want the best for, you know, and then bringing a child in? Because like that was one thing that I remember looking at her, and even in the first couple of days, I was like, how could you be a dad and like not want to be a part of it? Like how could, and I don't know if that's exacerbated because we had troubles with fertility and stuff like that as well. It wasn't like we had, like, I'm sure if you incidentally get pregnant or like the circumstances are quite different, but yeah, I always, like, I've been wondering, like, how would you not want to be a part of it? You know?
But I think that's different, right? I think that comes down to like some guys, their internal nature is I provide by putting food on the table, money, all that type of thing. So I think it depends on how you view what fatherhood is and what you were kind of, like you said, brought up with earlier in life. Because there are a few guys I know who are actively good dads, but their view on being a really good dad is the provider of the family type scenario. Whereas, like you said, if it was up to me, I'd love to be a stay-at-home dad. It'd be like the coolest job in the world.
Yeah. You got to work on your COD skills, mate. Get that Twitch account up and running.
Yeah. I just get my YouTube's growing like wildfire at the moment, mate. I'm 138 subscribers.
Bloody hell, mate. That's like 50% growth in like 2 weeks, brother.
Stop it.
Boys, we're on the time. Do we want to do one more? Do you want to do one more round?
What do we got for time?
We've got 3 minutes until the thing cuts us off.
Yeah, let's do another short round. 9 holes.
There we go.
Another 9 holes. Yeah, cool.
Can't promise I won't lose the golf club.
Not a 5-iron, guards.
No, I need that now.
All right, jump back in 2 secs. Like, even with what we were saying before with like, oh, there have been some like benefits of like having a baby in COVID and kind of giving you that time to like bond and stuff like that. I like, to be honest, like I'm super struggling with it, man. Like I'm an extrovert. Like I wanted to have our own house so that we could have people over in our own house.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, the fact that it's like, okay, cool, we've had a few weeks of like just the three of us, and that's probably been good for the neurotic dog that we have as well to have some time adjusting. But like the fact that it's like, you know, my sister and Rich, you know, if they want to come and visit their niece, have to like take the risk of like running the cops to come and visit.
Yeah.
Like, it's just
Yeah.
like, or not, you know, not even being able to have this conversation and have our first drink as dads, like in the
Together,
same
yeah.
room, you know, like it's as
Yeah.
much as there's pro, like there's tons of con with it as well, right?
There is. I look at it more from like, we'd just come out of that last lockdown, and obviously I'd had a fair bit of time at home then. I was struggling with how I was going to make it work, and Grace, who works with me, she had organised time off to cover as much as humanly possible, so that I didn't have to be there that much. And it was literally a blessing in disguise, because I did the minimum amount that I needed to do in that first probably 2 weeks, and had I been at the factory, I don't know if I could have got away with doing that little. So it was like, and I'm similar to you. I'm an extrovert. I like being around people. I like people coming over, and only now is it starting to be like, okay, let's speed this whole process up, because I'm ready to kind of see people. But yeah, the first 4 weeks was like a blessing in disguise for me. Like,
Yeah.
Business wise, and I mean, not business wise, but as in like timing wise, I should say, because obviously having a closed gym is not really good for business when you own a gym. But yeah, so it's I'm like hoping tomorrow brings some form of a plan. But when I went to the shops before, I shouldn't have read it, but on the side of a Herald Sun, it said that they're not going to open restaurants till they've had 2 weeks straight of 0 cases. So if that's the case for restaurants, they're not opening gyms anytime soon. So yeah, we'll see.
So guys, we're just chatting about like, as much as there's like been some pros to like the whole COVID situation and getting that time to kind of spend just in the immediate, like there's also obviously like a ton of cons too, right?
Yeah.
And I think like, you know, and obviously Jack, I'll, you know, let you speak for yourself, but Aka's like Guards is, you know, quite similar to me, and we have quite similar personalities, in that like a big part of like where we feed our energy off comes from like being around other people. And like Jack's an incredible chef, and if you ever hopefully when you get an invite round to Guards, you know, it's one of those things that I think, like it's an interesting world to bring a child into, when it's like, I wonder like how much of like you seeing for the first time people's faces and everyone's wearing masks, like what that does to like your perception of, you know, does that impact like your ability to read and developmentally in terms of like understanding how facial expressions work and picking up on like a lot of those nuances of communication? And I know like it's probably overthinking, and hopefully the whole mask situation isn't something that lasts more than the next couple of weeks, but yeah, it's
maybe not, but I think when they're this young, the cognitive processes to really read and interpret what this world is at the moment it's just not there. And
Yeah.
you know, I feel like this, one way or another, this right at this moment is just going to be, you know, a story to tell our kids.
They won't have any idea it even happened.
Children, they'll not know just how much the world had changed to this point. But probably because by the time that they're, you know, right up there with interpreting and understanding, it's going to be back to normal, or it's just going to be something we live with, and you know, they don't develop a vaccine, and they just develop some medicine to mitigate the systems associated with COVID. Who knows? There's still so much unknown about it. You know, but I've been exceptionally lucky to have not been affected financially from the situation whatsoever, and you know, even being lucky to prosper, not off the back of it. But you know, it's been hard to watch, you know, the friends and family that I know and love, you know, have to shut down their businesses, or you know, people, you know, good friends that have done an 18-year apprenticeship effectively to become a pilot, only to be told, no, you'll be made redundant, and moving forward, we're not even sure if there's going to be a role there for you. And you know, their partner works at Flight Centre, like that's a crushing defeat. So it's been shit and horrible to watch that, but it's also, it also brings out the best in people too. But yeah, strange old world.
We were speaking before about, the fact that we live in a time where like all the stuff that your parents have been able to sweep under the rug is pretty well documented on social media for at least three of us. But Akers, like there was a photo of you and Trace from 8 years ago at a music festival, like shared. And it's like, imagine having to explain to your kids like what stereo was, that we were allowed to like go into the MCG on grand final day, and they're like, what do you mean 100,000 people like gathered in one place? You know what I mean? Like imagine if, because like ultimately, like who knows? Like we keep saying, oh, when things get back to normal, but like Jack said, like who knows what normal looks like from this going forward. Like I could easily, as shit as it is, I could easily see it going like bouncing around from stages 1 to 4, like for intermittent amount of times, like over the next 6-12 months.
Well, if you take New Zealand as a benchmark of how to handle it initially, they went hundreds of days without a new case, and all of a sudden it bobbed up again. And it's just, to think of, like, I remember when we all thought we were in the clear, and rest you could, and I went and I met a couple of good friends at a pub and had my first tap beer in a while, and I just thought, I will never take this for granted ever again. And then 2 weeks later, for whatever reason, let's not point fingers and point blame. There's plenty of people who are prepared to do that. We're back in.
Jack is a father. Now he's a father, so responsible, diplomatic.
Yeah.
Well, I just feel like there's a lot of things and a lot of blame being, laid at the feet of certain politicians or certain shot callers, and really it's unfortunately down to humankind. It's the same as everything that's ever happened has happened off the back of a person or a group of people or a type of person, not necessarily fucking any one person.
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
Yeah, it's I mean, even going to the pub for a drink taken for granted. It's like even going to your house for dinner, right? Like going to someone else's house for dinner. Right?
Seeing my grandparents. Like I can't remember when I last saw my grandparents. And when I was a kid, it was a weekly thing. All 4 of them were local. I say 8 because I consider Francesca's grandparents my own as well. And we've not seen any of them in months now. And you think forward, you think on their behalf, two of which are alone, and 2 of which will be well and truly sick of each other by now, and 2 of which who are just very patiently waiting and playing their role. That'd suck. That'd suck shit. That'd be terrible.
I mean, we've got Kat's parents, right, who are obviously in Canada, and it's like, who knows? Like who knows?
When can you fly and visit again? Yeah, for sure.
At the moment, like Air Canada aren't even like, they don't even have flights available. You can't even pretend to book tickets, and so it's very likely that Matea might be a year
3,
old.
4.
Yeah, even older, at least a year old.
International travel for sure. Yeah.
What a world to bring kids into. Good job.
If you had told me 12 months ago what was going to happen, I would have been like, no way in hell. Even when, I mean, the writing was on the wall when China were building hospitals in the matter of 8 days. I was like, these guys are crazy. It's never going to get here. Next minute, my gym's getting shut down. It just shows you like everything can. I mean, I think it's Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey has this YouTube talk, and he talks about his dad played it safe his whole life.
Yeah.
And then eventually he failed. And he failed doing something that he didn't even want to do in the first place. And so for Jim, it was like, well, if I'm going to potentially fail anyway, might as well fail doing something that I want to do. And it's always kind of resonated me within that way where it's like, even if you play it safe, that doesn't guarantee
I
anything.
guarantee. Yeah.
No, we know people who, I mean, it's, even now, I mean, how many people's supers have just gone plummeted through the drain? And yeah, history shows will kind of come back up, but yeah, it's everything can change, and everyone will get stung some point in life. So it's like, how can you prepare yourself to keep moving forward?
YouTube.
That's it. YouTube University.
Learn to code, right? I think though, like, and I'm sure you guys both agree too, and it'd be super hard to mount an argument the other way, but I think
No, I don't agree.
Even yeah, you wouldn't. Even 12 months ago, like going into the whole process, if someone had said to me like, hey, this is like what's about to happen, I still would have gone through with it. Like I still would have gone down the path of like,
I wouldn't change anything from a father's perspective. No way. Yeah, 100%. It was always, yeah. Because like
more like, I guess more things like in place to safeguard Iron Tribe and what that looks like more than it would be like
yeah, for sure. But at the same time, like, as bad as it is, we're pretty damn lucky. Like, my grandpa grew up in the Great Depression. Your grandpas would have grown up in the Great Depression as well, right? Like, my grandpa's gone now, and my grandpa was a tough man. And I reckon I would have loved to have been alive during this, because he just would have been like, you're all a bunch of pussies. Like, are you kidding me right now? Like, why are you all, like, how are you complaining about this? So I would have loved to have heard his opinion on whether he would have been on the tinfoil side of things, or whether he would have been on the, just do what you're told type scenario.
I wonder how much of the complaints that, obviously if you're involved in an industry and built a career in like Jack said, something like being a pilot and air traffic, like you just like every right in the world to be feeling super hard done by, like, no fault of your own. But I also wonder how much of the population that is so vocal about like being super inconvenienced is really just an element of like, it's the first time really like they've ever gone through anything where they can't do exactly what they want to do at any given time. And how much they're struggling with like being told like there's a curfew,
I know, it's so bizarre.
Like it's super strange, but at the same time too, like it's maybe that circles back all the way back down to parenting and being like, these are some good lessons to teach your kids to deal with hardship, and how sometimes it is important to put the needs of others or of the community before the primary needs that you do want to service for yourself.
It's funny, like, if I was to give a blanket view as to who are the people that are kind of falling into that category of feeling really hard done by, even though they're not actually that hard done by. I know a couple of pilots who obviously highly affected by this, and they've completely pivoted. One is he's just recently started his like a carpentry business. He's going to build dog. One of his designs he put up on Instagram, it just kind of exploded, and now he's got Mick Williams designs, and he's building dogs beds, but it can go underneath where the TV sits, and he's just getting inquiry after inquiry. Like, I think most of the people that are quite who are fighting it are actually people who have a lot of time on their hands, who already had a lot of time on their hands, and this is just because they couldn't, like you said, do what they want to do. They're like angry teenagers being locked in their room, kicking up a fuss. Because I don't see many, and obviously this is a blanket statement, career people going crazy at the moment, right? They're just like, they want it as much as you and I want it to be finished, and they possibly don't agree with some of the things, but they're not also being like, let's go and throw a protest, and a day before we're about to find out the plan, like, yeah.
But on to play the devil's advocate here, there'd be people involved in that protest who, been critically wounded by, this pandemic, and aren't in a position to pivot out of the situation they're in. People who own cafes and own bars and pubs and have their money and life savings tied up in businesses that have, not unlike yourself, being shut down with no way out or no visible end.
For sure.
For sure. I think though, there's an element of, I feel like the greater percent, and I obviously have no like specific data to refer this to, but I almost feel like those that are truly affected are more in the camp of like, can we just all follow the fucking rules so that we can reopen our businesses, more than they're like, let's go and protest and like cause a big scene and point fingers and like potentially delay the situation.
1%.
Yeah.
Play your role.
Yeah. That's
Which is really difficult, right? Because, like you said, up until now, you've literally been able to do whatever the hell you wanted to do, whenever the hell you wanted to do it, really, as long as you kind of follow some form of rule.
Yeah. It is, I guess it is also getting to the point, like, and we're kind of, I guess we've gone full spectrum, completely off topic here. And that might be the amount of, now that I'm onto my second glass of red wine, but.
Slow down, big fella.
Got any bottle caps there, guards? But yeah, I think I feel like there's certain types of people, right? And I know, both of you pretty well enough to be, if whatever you were doing for whatever reason got shut down, COVID notwithstanding, whatever else it was, like, we're the kind of people that it wouldn't be, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm fucked then. It would be that switch to like, all right, well, I need to go and find something else
next?
to do pretty fucking quickly,
Yeah.
But yeah, who knows? Fingers crossed. Like, surely there's got to be some sort of reprieve now that it's 21 degrees outside, like telling people they can only be out there after they've been locked in all winter for the last 3 months. Like,
fingers crossed. Just give us, I think what my own, if I was to give one criticism, because I think that they've done the best of a bad situation, right? Because we will not know for another 10 plus years whether what we did was right or what we did was wrong. And, if we're light years ahead of every country. I think the one thing that I think that they overlook, and it would be difficult to give it, is the uncertainty is what kills people. And obviously there has to be some uncertainty, because you can't say in 3 weeks' time we're definitely coming out of this, because you just don't know how the cases are going to go if no one's coming forward or whatever. But if they gave like a target, like we need 7 straight days of 0 cases before, and it needs to be a hard, if it's 7.5 days or 6.5 days, and then someone gets, well, bad luck, we've still got another week to go. But giving people that hope and literally making it so that people like, the community ends up policing it. Because if you were told, all right.
Yeah, your peers are holding you to a standard, right?
For sure. 7 days, if we go 7 days in a row of 0 cases, cafes will open. If we go 7 days after that, this will open, whatever it is. I think that would make some people, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that's the way to do it. That would be my only criticism, is the unknown. Give it 6 weeks, we'll see what happens. Well, 6 weeks, like you said earlier, guards, for someone who has just completely lost everything, or who potentially stands to lose everything, a life savings being put into a business, whatever it is, it's too much of the unknown. And if you are locked up in your house doing nothing, and you have no one living with you, and you are on the University of YouTube, you are going to start to believe, because stats don't matter. Like, people will go crazy. Like, this is what happens. That's why we're designed to hang around other people. So hopefully tomorrow they announce some form of, like you said, reprieve, or some exit of this.
I feel they're set to have an each way bet. And on one hand you're like, well, for fuck's sake, like, how long is this going to go on for? But if they were like, yeah, 70 cases, not bad, all right, free reign, unless you've got symptoms, unless you're feeling a bit sniffly, don't go out. And then all of a sudden, we're doing this again when we should be, carving the turkey with our family. So I feel like, again, listeners, play your role. Couple more weeks of heartache and hardship, and maybe we're lucky enough to come out the other side of this in time to enjoy the nice weather and each other's company at the business end of the year, and not,
I think Christmas on the horizon is like that has to be playing a factor, right? Like, there has to be an element of, we have to get to a point where it's okay for people to gather in groups of 20 by Christmas. or we're going to have a
Yeah.
fucking shit show on our hands because people are going to do it anyway. Right. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's kind of where we're getting to now, in that it's finally 19 degrees outside and the sun's outside. Right. And I don't know about you guys, but when we take the dog for our like 1 hour walk, like we maybe pass one other person in the suburbs.
Up
Right?
south.
So to be like, to not be able to have, you know, legally like any more time, I feel like it's going to get to a point where people, if you don't let people spend a bit more time outside, maybe like gather with 1 or 2 other people, keep your distance, but you can be outside, get some vitamin D, because we know that's going to have a positive impact on everyone's mood.
Yeah.
And half of this is just because everyone's super shitty from being inside in the miserable weather.
Yeah.
But I think like there has to be a give of something, or people are going to start to just take it. And if you flaunt one rule, you're going to start to flaunt every other rule as well.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. It'll be, yeah, it'll be
Anyway,
very
back to
interesting to
fatherhood.
see. Yeah, very up topic.
So fuck the diaper bin.
Tracy's just pulled us back in as well.
Yeah.
Tracy just yelled out, "Are you guys off topic?"
to go full circle, I was having a think before when I sent you guys some of the questions that I had, and we talked about
questions.
It's in the WhatsApp group. Talked about some of the useless things, but I'll give you the tip. My favorite 2 purchases so far, which if anyone's listened to this point of the podcast, like
Maggie will edit out the last half an hour anyway, so no one will.
Maggie's
no one's
not
gonna know about.
Maggie's not going to listen to. Yeah.
No one knows. We've been talking about COVID for the last half an hour.
But 2 things that I would say definitely go and buy, and on the risk of 3. The first one is like, we got a thermometer that gives you water temperature as well as like skin temperature. I reckon that's been like one of the best investments ever.
Can you tell me where you got that from?
First bath time.
Link it below.
Yeah, I will. I'll leave a link for the description of the podcast.
Amazon link.
The first, through the affiliate code. The first bath we had was a fucking disaster. Like I was
Those was ours.
Cat was scared it was too cold. And then in the end we were both like fretting around, and Matea just screamed the whole time, and it was miserable.
Yeah.
But since having the thermometer, it's like, okay, 39 to 40 degrees. Once, like if she's in, she loves it. Like she's happy. That'd be the first thing. The second one I'd say, and it goes to temperature again, the Grow Egg, which is like the egg-shaped thermometer that you plug into the wall, and it changes color based on the temperature of the room. And it like tells you whether the room is like warm enough, especially for us being in the new house and not being sure where the heat is on, like which rooms heat up differently. Having something that's like near the bassinet, because obviously the bassinet's in with the rocking chair and everything else that's in our room at the moment, can't even move in there. But having that tell you like, it's like 17 and a half, 18 degrees in here, like, and she sleeps better, like when the temperature is at that point. That's without a doubt probably been the 2 biggest things. And now Akers, thanks very much, has like convinced Kat that we need a co-sleeper in our room instead of a bassinet. So there's 300 bones that I get to shove out probably over the next 2 weeks, because she's sick of falling asleep with like one hand over the bassinet. Like,
it's so hard putting your hand over that bassinet. You get a co-sleeper. It's the best thing ever.
So those are my top 3. Guards?
I'll play devil's avocado again, mate, with the co-sleeper. I've heard mixed reports, one of which was it is next to impossible to get them into their own bed after 3, 4, however long you run it for. So as much as it, and you know, we've not administered a dummy either, and each to their own.
She came
out. You know, they can every action has an equal and opposite reaction, and you know, a little bit of short-term pain of maybe rocking the bassinet to sleep, or you know, waking up every few hours is going to be better than when they're full of energy and a bit more developed at 6 months, a year old, and you know, the only place they'll sleep is in between you two. So I'm each to their own. I would love to introduce something that might make our lives a little bit easier right at this second. But I'm also hesitant to jump the gun at something that might prove difficult to wean them off later down the track. That is just my take.
It is a constant question of like, you're right. Like everything you do is a trade-off at some point. right?
For sure.
And it's like, do we like run on? And I'll say this too. I was expecting when people like, oh, you get no sleep. Like I was expecting like you're constantly awake for like the whole like night point. But I'll say this to anyone that's not or hasn't yet experienced it. It's not so
Don't
much
tell it
that
to a
you're
female.
up. Yeah. Yeah. As a
Because they
dad,
are up for that long.
yeah, they are. Except, yeah,
Yeah.
but for us, it's more just like you kind of get a lot of broken sleep, right? Like I know for us,
Yeah.
the kind of the situation, the routine we're in is that Maddie's like cluster feeding at the moment, and if she's like cluster
She's still
feeding,
cluster feeding.
yeah, she just every other night she just wants to feed like every. I think it's a lot of soothing as well.
Jesus. Yeah,
But like,
she's using the nipple as a dummy.
Kat's like, I'm up. She wants to eat, but she'll do a 12-minute feed. You know,
Yeah,
like
that's not soothing, man. That's
so it's
eating.
not just like she's soothing, but so Kat's
Yeah.
like, all right, well, I'm up until this point, and then if I'm already awake and I'm about to feed again in 40 minutes, I may as well just change her, right?
Yeah.
And then at 4:30, I get the like, she's like needs a change and she's eaten, so you need to get up and change her, and I like wake up. It's more that like sleep at 12, wake up at 4, wake up at 6, wake up at 8, and then you're like, I feel like I've had no sleep. And then, like I said before, then you realize like you have slept, which means like you're feeling super guilty because someone else hasn't if you have.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it is that trade-off of like, well, if a co-sleeper and like if Kat could sleep better for the time she does sleep because she just put a hand out rather than like falling asleep on the bassinet, is that not like essentially the same thing anyway, right?
And that's what we have. So like with our co-sleeper, at first, the whole reason we got it was because our bassinet sleeps right next to our bed, and Tracy obviously saw through the stomach, didn't necessarily have the core strength, would have to sit up if she was sleeping on her side, get up, and then reach over and like settle her, soothe her, rock her, whatever it was. It was almost easier for me to get up out of bed, walk around the bed and soothe her because that's how much pain she was in, especially in that first week and a bit. And then when we got the co-sleeper, it was like, now she doesn't even look at us while she sleeps. Like she's funny. She used to be really good on her right side. Now she's like always facing left. She's got a bald patch on her left side. We're trying to like get her to chain her head to look the other way.
Yeah, because she sleeps on your side of the bed, as I told you.
She's looking away from me. Yeah, so that there, like just from like, even when we swapped the bassinet to my side, that was so frustrating. Getting out, checking she was okay, making sure because even if she wasn't breathing, I'd have to like, what's she doing over there? Is she alive? Like, so for us, it's been good. And yeah, 100% right. Everyone like each to their kind of own, but that saved my arm a lot of dead arm hours. That's for sure.
Top three purchases like would highly recommend to any expecting dads. Is the co-sleeper in there?
For me, it would be that, and I love the swaddle, that arms up swaddle.
You mean like the sleep sack?
Yeah, sleep sack. I don't know what we'd call it. Is it a swaddle, honey, that she sleeps in? Sleep suit. I don't even know these things. Yeah.
Ergo pouch.
Yeah.
What's that? Ergo pouch. Yeah.
Ergo
and
pouch.
she just hands up. She normally sleeps with her hands up anyway, and she's got long ass nails, and we try to file them, but 2 seconds later they're sharp as all hell again. So possibly close sleeper in that, and then the change table is nice and high for us. It's just like right next to the it's on top of her chest of drawers, so it's where it is. You literally walk in, you put her up. One tip that worked for us anyway, we got a membership through the Australian Breastfeeding Association, and Tracy did a couple of little Zoom classes with them, which was really good. And one of the tips that she got from one of the women was put it on an angle, the actual change table, like put the cushion up a little bit so that if she's in the middle of the feed and she hasn't fed, you put her down, she's still at an angle so she can kind of burp herself while being slightly uphill. So that's been kind of good for us. That, as well as when she does shit, which is on the change table, it goes downhill as opposed to up her back and then gets her clothes dirty. And then at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're not only changing her nappy, but you got to change her singlet, her suit.
I hate that.
And all that other stuff. Yeah.
When you're like doing the half asleep change and then they like spew on themselves and you're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, you literally out. Is it enough for you
the
that you've got to change it, or is it not enough? Like, yeah. But that's been
top 3, Swiss ball, which I said earlier. ergo pouches. He loves. He's a hands up like a cactus sleeper as well.
Yeah.
And we got it's not really a purchase, so it can't really count, but it's a mobile bassinet, and you know, you can move him around. Like if if Francesca wants to have a shower and he's settled, she can, you know, if you want to watch him the whole time, you can move him into the bathroom. And then if you want to cook a meal or empty the dishwasher, you can move him into the kitchen. So a little, and I don't think they're that expensive, mobile bassinet. And it's also what he sleeps in primarily at night. So, those three things: Swiss ball, ergo pouches, the sleeping suits, keeps them warm, keeps their arms free. And yeah, I'd say one thing in addition to that, the wonder suits, which you can cover their hands and free them up or cover them again.
Yeah.
And they've also got a zip at the legs, so when they need a change, highly recommend good quality nappies. We went with a couple of cheap nappies, and just made it.
How much easier does changing a nappy become once like the umbilical cord stub like is
how hard? I forgot how hard that was.
I don't know if it's a coincidence that like once you're a week or 10 days in and that thing's fallen off, that you've changed like 100 nappies, but definitely like every time I change a nappy, I'm like, oh, try not to knock it. Like that must be the most painful thing.
Yeah. When did you cut yours? Did you cut your umbilical cord?
Yeah. It's like calamari kind of.
It was so bizarre because I was literally halfway through cutting and I was expecting them to be like, not there. I was like, oh, it just felt so weird.
So when I cut ours and the nurse was like holding it between her fingers, and Summers told me like he's got this story, guards, where he's like, oh, he cut the cord, but he fucked it up. And so he cut and there's still a little bit. So he had to like cut again. And he was like the most embarrassing moment of like the whole delivery room for Summers. And I did the same thing. Like I cut, but she had it held between her fingers. I was super worried I was going to cut like the webbing on her finger, the nurse. So anyway, I cut the cord and then they're like, oh, the waiter, do you want some skin to skin? I was like, yeah, for sure. So like, all right, well, you know, like have a seat, take your top off, get ready. And so I do. And then they're like, oh, we're going to
you already tops off.
Yeah, we're going to shorten the cord. Do you want to cut it again? So I was like, yeah. They take a photo, and in the context of the photo, it just looks like halfway through the delivery room, I've just like taken my fucking shirt.
That's sick.
Tops off in the delivery room.
That's it.
Boys, it's been almost 2 hours of your time. I'm sure your wives, fiancés, mothers of your babies are staring at you over the screen, tapping their wrist, looking at their watch. Surprised at all the empty beer cans and whiskey bottles you've got laying around you. But thank you so much for joining me. Couldn't think of a better bunch of dudes to celebrate the eve of our first Father's Day with.
Thank you very much for having me, mate. It was good fun.
And
thanks for having us, BJ. Happy Father's Day, mate.
And to you. And let's do it again.
Happy Father's Day.
For sure, mate.
Leave it a couple of weeks so we've got a bit more experience, and hopefully we can do one of these in person.
Definitely. Soon enough, mate.
Beautiful. All right, boys.
Cheers, guys.
Have a good one.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for having us. Bye.
Bye.